Hi everyone. Yes, I'm Corie. I work for Channel 4, and I'm here, I guess, with the hat on of someone with a lived experience of disability. I have a severe sight impairment, and I am beyond excited to be chatting today with these three amazing business leaders who've all made commitments around disability inclusion. We're going to chat today about the journey to disability inclusion and accessibility. And I think the reason I'm so excited about the conversation that we're going to have today is just when I think about the collective power to influence and really shift the dial in this space that you three guys have collectively. I mean, come on, we've got Cindy here from Microsoft in the tech space. We've got Leena from Unilever, same applies, global supply chain and household production. And Mark, WPP, such massive brand muscle. I think it's been mentioned today already, responsible for about 1 in 5 of the ads that we are exposed to. So I think this is going to be a great conversation. I'm sure you've all got some amazing insights to share. And I think the best place to start is to talk about your respective journeys thus far. Be great to hear from each of you for a couple of minutes on where you're at on that journey, why you're championing in this space, what makes you passionate about this, and some of the learnings along the way. So Cindy, can we start with you?
You're going to start with me. Excellent. Well, thank you, Corie, and thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this panel. And I know Mark and Leena and have great, are doing great work on this topic, and I'm really looking forward to this. But to answer your question, I think over the last few years for me, there's been a number of really significant moments that have opened my eyes to the human impact of accessible design and disability and inclusion. Too many to even mention, but I think the one that I remember most vividly was a few years ago, it must have been 2017, at our Future Decoded event in London at the XL. We invited this developer named Tom Nabarro onto the main stage in front of a live audience of 5,000 people. And Tom is a Microsoft super user, and he's quadriplegic. And he came onto stage with a very high-tech wheelchair and lots of tech around him. And he showed the audience how he logs in using Windows Hello facial recognition, how he uses Cortana, our virtual voice agent, to install Visual Studio on stage. And then he started coding with eye gaze. We got such amazing feedback from that session. I mean, I think half the audience probably didn't even realize these features existed. And everyone felt so moved by his story. It was just one of those moments that taught me that we really need to start putting accessibility front and center. I'll just give you one other example. Just last week, I was on Teams video chatting with a really talented young female AI engineer from Microsoft Spain. Her name is Sandra Timon, and she's partially deaf and blind. And she's a leading accessibility advocate in Spain. And she, like so many others, have helped open my eyes to the sort of the everyday power of technology to empower people with disabilities. And I've learned that, when we empower people with disabilities using technology, actually we empower everybody. So I'm just continuously learning, Corie, about the impact that we can have as a global technology company.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Cindy. Leena, should we turn to you next? Absolutely passionate about HR, I know, a great leader. So tell us a bit about your journey.
Yes. Thanks, Corie. Thanks for inviting me. And I'm so delighted to be here, and especially delighted to be here with Mark and Cindy, 2 of our favorite partners. So, for us, it's integrated into our business strategy. Our compass is about making sustainable living commonplace. Very simple, easy to remember our purpose as a company. 3 beliefs that underpin it, very easy to remember. Brands with purpose grow. Companies with purpose last, and people with purpose thrive. So we really believe in creating an environment at Unilever where everyone thrives. We have gone out publicly and said we want to be a beacon for equity, diversity, and inclusion across the world. We've said that internally, we've said that externally, just to put that pressure on us to keep raising our game. We started this journey about 10 years ago, and the first focus was gender. 70% of our consumers and shoppers are women. And we made tremendous progress. We were out this year saying we are 50-50. We have balanced our management ranks. But then we said that's simply not enough. We have so much more to do to be this beacon for diversity and inclusion. And we set in place a couple of big commitments. One is to be the number one employer of choice for people with disabilities everywhere in the world. And we're talking of 190 countries and barely 75 where we actually measure our employer brand. So it's a pretty big job to say we'll be number one employer of choice for people with disabilities across the world. And the second commitment we made is that at least 5% of our workforce will be people with disabilities by 2025. So two big commitments that have moved us to action, because we believe that putting some audacious commitments out there has a power of focusing the mind and getting us to do some big, bold things to shift the needle on this. And I really believe proximity drives empathy. So the more we can do to make our workforce more representative of the world around us, the better it is for everyone. Because the more we increase the inclusive quotient of an organization, the more we increase the emotional awareness of an organization, the more easier it is for everyone to bring the best selves to work every day, to be the best version in Unilever every day. So in short, I'd love for Unilever to be the most inclusive company on the planet.
Wow, great ambition to have. Really awesome ambition. Mark, let's turn to you next. I kind of feel almost like we're sort of on the same bit of turf, because WPP, like Channel 4, has that huge capability to really influence the representation of disability in society. So talk to me a bit about your journey in this space.
Yeah, I think, as you say, we are like Channel 4, a creative company, and creative companies by definition have the ability to inspire people. And it was Caroline Casey, who I think has been with us today on this conference, who really inspired me on the journey. I think from a business context, seeing how she overcame. I wouldn't even say she overcame her disability. She sort of blew through it in a way. And the role I took before this as CEO Wonderman, I asked Caroline to come and speak to our first leadership conference, because I thought her journey was so inspirational to show people what they can achieve. So I think there's really three roles at WPP that we can play in making the world a more inclusive place. I think the first is about representation, the people that work for us. I mean, I think Christina Mallon is talking to us later today or tomorrow, and Christina runs our inclusive design practice. A really inspirational figure, again, someone who kind of carries on as though nothing could stop her. I'd say the second thing is through our work and the work we do with clients, and clients like Unilever and Microsoft, and making sure that our work is sort of inclusive by design. We might touch on that, but I think that's a really important concept. And we have programs like Change the Brief at Mindshare, where when we get a brief from a client, maybe for a business problem or a marketing problem, we change it to answer not just the question we originally asked, but a different question. Can we achieve something else through this work that will make it better? And then I think that for us, it's really about the impact of our work. As you mentioned, we are in some way, creatively or through our media businesses, responsible for 1 in 5, 1 in 6 of the world's commercial messages. And that obviously has a big impact on people, on what they think and what they believe. Do people see people like themselves represented in commercial messages or not? Do the people we have working behind the camera or on screen represent society? And so I think we can really change attitudes to many of the issues in society, but we can really change attitudes towards disability as well. And so I think that's something that we're very keen to tackle. I mean, going back to a brand we worked on with Unilever, Dove. I mean, I think Dove has really changed attitudes to what female beauty means, and I'd say in a very positive way for society. So I think we're trying to use our influence in a much more positive fashion. Brilliant
stuff. Really fantastic to hear. almost like I want to start asking more questions, but I can't because we've got to be conscious of time. So we'll move on and talk about culture. And if you're okay with this, I'd quite like to park the disability kind of angle just for a minute and think more broadly about the importance of culture and leadership and mission in the broad business sense. So Leena, do you want to take this one first?
Yes. It's one I talk about a lot, Corie. I really think culture is the magic ingredient that makes strategy into a reality. And culture eats strategy for breakfast. I mean, we know that for a fact. If you don't focus on the cultural elements that need to change, you can't make change happen. It's never technology and process that comes in the way of change. It's our behaviors, it's our mindset, it's our beliefs, it's our assumptions. And that's all the soft stuff that we have to get right in order to shift any action. So one of the things in Unilever that we do a lot on is focusing on our culture. And culture shifted by leadership behaviors. 70% of the impact on culture is how leaders behave, what kind of examples they talk about, what kind of behaviors they role model. And a 30% impact is because of the reinforcing systems and mechanisms you put in place, the reward systems, the incentive programs, and so on and so forth. So what we are trying to do is really help leaders understand a new kind of leadership. So our standards of leadership, again, is very simple. It's the inner game of leadership and the outer game of leadership. And the inner game is all about a sense of purpose and service. It's about learning agility. It's about personal mastery. So I think we're the only company of our scale and size that's putting 150,000 people through purpose workshops. What is your purpose and mission in life? How does your individual purpose and mission count for in Unilever? What difference can you make in Unilever with your individual purpose, passion, and mission? So we're really dialing up the inner game. And what that is doing is when we dial up the inner game for leaders, the sense of humanity increases in the company. Things like, what are we doing for our people? How inclusive are we? Are we making it easier for everybody to bring their best version to work? Becomes legitimate conversations every single day. So I do think culture begins with a focus on leadership behaviors, and getting leaders to tap into their inner humanity. Because the inner humanity is all good. Everyone wants to do good in the world. Everyone has a force for good in themselves. And that's why we believe at Unilever so strongly that you have to do well by doing good. It's not just doing well and doing good sit in two different buckets of the organization. We think it comes together. You do good, and by doing good for lots of people, the 2 billion consumers that we touch, we do well as a company. So in specifically with disabilities, some of the things we're doing for culture is launching the Enable Network, which is people with disability and their allies coming together to share experiences of being at Unilever. We have been inspired by Microsoft and done our first global disability survey to have a baseline of how many of our people are ready to disclose. And 75% of our people have disclosed whether they have a disability or not. And we're doing a lot of campaigning around the International Day for people with disabilities in December. We have a whole week-long celebration, telling stories, making our purpose alive, bringing inspiring people, breaking stereotypes that we want to do in advertising, but breaking stereotypes and norms inside the company. So that's in short, Corie. I really believe culture is at the heart of making the change. If you need the numbers and the representation, but to retain people, you need to change the culture of the company to make it truly inclusive.
Yeah, totally agree. I absolutely agree. And I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of talking too much about what we've done at Channel 4, but absolutely echo so much of what you've been talking about just there through what we've seen in our own organisation as well. Cindy, what about you? Culture, mission, anything you'd like to add?
Well, so many of the things that Leena talked about resonate strongly with me. Microsoft is also a very mission-led company, and our mission is to use technology to empower every person and organization on the planet to achieve more. And that means people of all abilities. And this is something we talk a lot about at Microsoft. And I definitely think, there's a renewed sense of urgency given the events of 2020 for companies to really reflect deeply on their responsibilities in this area. You know, in the last few years under Satya Nadella's leadership, our company's really gone through a very profound cultural transformation, and there's been a fresh focus on the lived experience of our employees every day. And we talk at Microsoft about operationalizing D&I, because it really is about micro behaviors and putting a diversity and inclusion lens on every aspect of the employee experience, from recruitment to onboarding to learning, promotion, workplace design. We really try to hold ourselves accountable for inclusive behavior every day. And then beyond the employee experience, we put a D&I lens on how we market ourselves, the inclusive stories we tell, how we engage with our customers and partners to help them on their accessibility journey, even the products and services that we create. We're really passionate about inclusive design and creating products that unlock the full potential of people at work, at school, and in their daily lives. And we know when we do that well, it leads to greater innovation for everyone. But all of our passion on this topic really starts with a strong sense of mission and purpose and tone from the top of our company.
Brilliant, great stuff. Mark, turn to you. Anything you can add here?
I think actually when I started as chief executive, I spent quite a lot of time with Unilever. I remember going to a fantastic dinner. I'm sure Leena was at, where they talked about the sustainable living plan, and I really admired the simplicity of the purpose at Unilever. And so, we set out a new purpose at WPP. The purpose of the company has to be beyond profit if we truly want to be motivating, to the people that work for us. We set out a purpose to use the power of creativity to build a better future, for people, planet, clients, and communities, the people that really look at our work. And I think, as Cindy said, it comes down to a few things. It comes down to leadership. Do I, as chief executive, do I personally, take responsibility for making this type of company, quite frankly, the type of company that I would want to work in, as well as the type of company that I'd want our people to work in. I think that's the first thing. Secondly, then it falls on the leaders around me, and as a team, do we sign up to the next set of commitments? And then we're driving that down to the type of behaviors that we will reward. We're looking at incentive design to make sure that we reward people that build the type of company that we want to build. And then we're going further, into setting targets of representation to make sure that we are doing a good job through the way we hire and promote and recruit people inside the company to represent society. And I think that it makes a WPP that, quite frankly, does better work for our clients. This stuff can feel quite sort of touchy-feely, if you like, but I think it's no less important because it is. Because I think that if our people truly represent society and truly they can bring their own selves to work, they will do better work. We will get better creative ideas if we listen to people and respect their opinions. So I think that it really flows through, and it really flows through into the types of clients that we work with. I mean, there is a hard business element to this, which is, our clients are wrestling with the same issues we're talking about, and they want to work with partners like WPP who recognize the importance of these issues and are committed to taking action. So this has a hard business angle to it. And I think that it's important to state that, because I think if it has a hard business angle, and if we're more successful, the more we lean into it, it means we'll do more. And that, I think, is important.
Yeah, totally echo loads of that. And great to hear from all of you, the same kind of sentiments coming through, that, culture is just one of those absolute cornerstones. You get that right and you're onto that winning path. So great to hear. Now let's talk a bit about process, because commitment is all well and good, but process kind of sits behind a lot of success. And I know sometimes we don't necessarily think of process as sounding the most sexy, but again, another kind of key cornerstone, I think. I'd say my own kind of personal experience, I've come to realise how important it is to be able to speak up sometimes at work. Certainly at Channel 4, in recent years, we've developed a number of employee resource groups, and our staff networks are really successful and doing great work, and we're kind of there to support the business and to challenge the business. And so as Mark mentioned at the beginning, I'm co-chair of Full Purple, which is Channel 4's disability staff network, and I really like to think of us as a kind of critical friends to the business. So I guess that's one process, the employee voice, that I see working really well at Channel 4. I'm hoping that you'll all be happy to come to the table now with some thoughts on that general topic of process. Cindy, shall I start with you?
Sure, absolutely. No, it's such a great question, Corie, because I think all the energy and passion in the world only leads to impact when you put it into action. And that's why I like to talk about how we operationalize this. And one of the things, as you mentioned, one of the things that we're finding is the best way for us to listen and learn is through our employee resource groups. And they keep us honest and they advise us on how we can do better. And that's a really important listening system for us. We also took action to evolve our approach to events. And actually, today, accessibility is such a central focus for every event that we produce. And virtual events like this one give us the opportunity to use the full suite of digital accessibility features like live captioning, subtitling, sign language interpretation on screen, audio description, and so much more. Another way we take action at Microsoft is by offering accessibility training to our employees. We have a badging program that teaches our employees best practices on how to present inclusively, how to host events. And it's not even mandatory. This is voluntary training, and yet hundreds and hundreds of our employees earned their accessibility badges, which I think is a great illustration of the passion that exists across our business. But finally, the big area for me, which I'm super excited about, is just how we make accessibility a business imperative. As Mark said, there's a business rationale here, which is, here in the UK, people with disabilities are the fastest growing minority group, and the value of that purple pound, that spending power, is estimated to be 250 billion pounds a year to the British economy. So many of our customers care deeply about this subject. And if we can encourage and empower them to take real and tangible action, we can really deliver digital inclusion at scale. And I think, Unilever and WPP are two excellent examples of how we're helping our customers achieve their targets in this area.
Awesome. Leena?
Great examples from Cindy. And like I said, we take a lot of inspiration from our partners and doing things differently. We have the Global Diversity Board, which is led by our CEO, Alan Jobe. So we want to signal that this is of the greatest importance to the business. And we have created what's an accessibility framework, which is everything from recruitment to retirement for our people and every moment that matters in between. And we've challenged ourselves saying at each of those moments, how can we make sure we're truly creating accessibility and equity for all our people? And it is indeed our network, which is Enable, which is our network of people with disabilities and their allies who help us design that. And there's some great examples of how things I hadn't thought of before are brought to light. So for example, one of the things we had a discussion with all of them about was how COVID has impacted people with disabilities. And while there's some mixed responses, for some, it's been tougher to be through the loneliness and isolation that some of COVID has meant. But for a large number of them, our network felt that COVID has actually leveled the playing field for them because they feel like everyone has the same accessibility. Everyone's on a video call. There's no differences. You can't tell. So we've used some of that as we've designed our easement processes to get people back to work. We've consciously put a huge perspective for our disabled employees to make it even better for them when they come back to a workplace that's sort of hybrid in the post-COVID world. So it's really like Cindy said, listening to our people, lived experiences, the best example, starting from the top so that senior people are listening to what it means to work in Unilever effortlessly, what it takes for everyone to feel included, and building the accessible communication and assistive technology. So more and more self-serve catalog for accessible tools and software, more and more global guidelines for what inclusive communication looks like. you're absolutely right. We have to build this into our processes to make it sustainable, way beyond, not just for now, but forever.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, you might have a sense that Cindy and Leena have covered this amply already, but is there anything you would like to add on the subject of process?
No, I don't think so. I think all I'd add is that when we work with clients on these topics, we touch many more people inside the organisation, and I think that really helps us to spread the word and to evangelise. But we can maybe talk a bit about that later. Yeah,
sure. The one thing that occurs to me in all of this is, this is all brilliant and energising and wonderful, but we all know that in the whole realm of everything, there are so many competing demands on time and resources. So maybe I haven't got time to go to each of you in turn. If one of you would like to take the question on, how do we keep this real and relevant and make sure that the disability inclusion doesn't sort of slip off the board agenda or the agenda generally? Leena, do you want to take it?
Sure. Like all things, priority means it has to be in the business strategy. That's why I said it's so important for us. It's integrated into Compass. It's got to have leadership attention and priority. So it has to start from the CEO and the top table. You can't delegate it. And it has to have elements of building up much more a bottom-up movement. Yeah, one of the things is the business case and the moral case have to both integrate. And we have brands doing some great work. I mean, Mark spoke about Dove. Dove is the brand that we're doing a lot of inclusive work on. And one of the things they're doing together with our partners is creating a Dove Deo bottle for the UK that is easier for people with visual impairment, hearing impairment, cognitive disability to be able to work with and engage and have access to. And Dove is one of our most successful brands. It grows every year. It appeals to more and more consumers every year. So in many ways, we have to build the moral case and the business case together to be able to ensure this gets continued attention from the top table and from the business.
Totally agree. It's great to hear you say that. And yeah, absolutely. I can't add to that. Should we talk about product? Everyone's in the game one way or another. We'll start off, I think, by talking about the actual buying process, which obviously, Mark, is your realm. You represent some of the world's greatest brands, and you create so much collateral that really does need to be accessible. So give us some of your thoughts and experiences and, how we can help brands to reach people with disabilities in a much more kind of routine way, I guess.
Yeah, I really like this notion of inclusive design, and I think the way to think about it is that the biggest design fail to me is a disabled entrance to a building, right? Because that basically says you built the building the wrong way in the first place, right? There should be an entrance to the building that everybody can use. Now, we can't go back to the 19th century and recreate the world, but we can do that today. And so we're working with Microsoft on Unilever on an inclusive design lab to think through in everything that they do, how do we make products that everybody can use? And I think that should just be the way in which we go about business. But we can go further, and there's some work that we've done with Tommy Hilfiger that Christina played a big role in doing, in designing a line of adapted clothing for people with disabilities, clothing that's easy to take on and put off. You can do it up with one hand, not two hands, and it came about a little bit because Tommy Hilfiger himself personally was touched in his family by disability, and an idea really to create a line of clothing. Now, what's interesting is that it's a for-profit business and it's growing and it's successful. I think secondly, in the marketing of it, the whole end-to-end marketing was done from designing the clothes to shooting the television commercial to the people that featured in the clothing were people with disabilities. So it was sort of built into the Tommy Hilfiger adaptive line. So I think that we need to do both things. But I think in principle, I would say the principles of inclusive design, I think, are the most important ones, because if we apply them consistently, then we really will, sort of make the world a much more inclusive place.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think as we fix that better, equally we start to help disability itself just not be seen as such a problem. Because I think part of the really bad rep that disability has is because it's seen so frequently as a problem, because you've got to fix things after the event. And actually, if we can get into that mindset, this idea of inclusive design, and everybody's encouraged to think about accessibility right from the get-go, it suddenly doesn't become a problem later in the day, and quite often you get a better end product as a result. So yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Mark. Leena, should we talk about product next? You've talked about Dove already. How much further do you think we've got to go to really get the best product experience?
It's a long way. I must say with all humility that it's a long way still. Yeah. And it's fantastic that we are working with Mark and team and using the Inclusive Design Laboratory to stretch our thinking on how we can make our products and brands much more accessible. But it is still a long way up. It's still one or two examples when we have 400 brands that touch billions of consumers everywhere. One of the examples I was inspired by, because we have such scale and we can use the scale for good in such powerful ways. For example, in Indonesia, we have an app called Jerak, because 1 out of 10 Indonesians are disabled. We know that the roads and infrastructure is not great to get to work or get to anywhere. And this app allows people with disability to understand where there is access to disability-friendly facilities. It maps the mapping guides, gives them more guidance on the routes, and they can speak with other people who are like them to find places that are easier to navigate to get to work or wherever else they want to. And I was absolutely blown to see that 87 million people use this app. And it's like the #1 trending app in travel at a local country level. So it just shows that if we are thoughtful about the products we make, the brand experiences we have, we could make such a difference in the world. It would make sense for the consumers. It allows our brands to get the mind and heart space that we want our brands to have. And it makes business sense, it makes common sense, it makes moral sense, all of it coming together. So long way to go, but some examples to give us hope.
Yes, and hope we'll cling on to it and, and make it happen. Awesome stuff. Thank you. Cindy, the digital tech space, I mean, the whole world is becoming increasingly reliant on the tech. So, everything needs to be inclusive. So what can Microsoft do to kind of really raise the bar now in that accessibility space?
Yeah, I think Mark said it beautifully. I mean, inclusive design thinking is deeply embedded within our processes. And we don't build technology for disabled people. We build technology that works for everyone. Every website, every application, our productivity software, our operating system, our gaming experiences are built with everyone in mind. And, we've made some amazing progress, but we still have a very long way to go. I know we're short on time, so I did just want to pick up on Leena's point about COVID-19, because I think it's, we've just done some research in the US, and it's clear to us that people with disabilities in some ways are being disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. And in the US, 1 in 5 employees with disabilities have lost their jobs since the beginning of the pandemic, compared to 1 in 7 without disabilities. Mm-hmm. So I do think it's worth recognizing that these are very challenging times for people with disabilities. We have a disability answer desk, and we've seen call volumes increase 200% since the pandemic began. So I think we're making great progress in this space, but there's just so much more work to do.
Agree entirely. I didn't actually know that stat on disability job losses as well, which is really quite sobering, isn't it? But okay, let's talk a bit about innovation. I'm conscious of time too. We've touched on innovation already, so we'll be brief with this. But clearly, with all businesses growing and moving forward, innovation is kind of business critical. I'm wondering whether there's time to go to all three of you on this. So if anyone who wants to leap in with the answer that they feel is most prevalent. But the question really is, why, when we're thinking about innovation, is disability important to consider?
Who wants to go?
No, I think, look, I just say there are many examples where people with tackling issues that people with disability can lead to innovation. I'm told that the typewriter was invented for a countess who was losing her sight. Yeah. There are many things that in tackling one problem, you come up with an answer. So I think that we should continue to persist in trying to make the world a more inclusive place. And I'm sure that we all struggle with finding the shower bottle and opening a can and many things, right? Increasingly as we get older. So I think that this will generally be a better thing for all of us.
Awesome. Sorry.
The big complex problems of our time need different minds, and therefore some of the psychological safety we need for people with diverse ideas, diverse life experiences, diverse toolkits is so important to be able to find a breakthrough answer to some of these big complex problems that can't be solved by one brain alone.
Yeah, absolutely agree. It's the diversity of perspective it's so massively important. Thank you guys for that. As we kind of come to the end of this, it'd be great just to hear what you kind of all hope for the future, for just the next couple of years, maybe, in this accessibility space. Cindy, do you want to take it first?
Yeah, I'm very optimistic, Corie. I mean, I'm blessed with a team of very dedicated colleagues and a CEO who keeps accessibility at the top of our list of priorities as a company. And what I'm really excited about is the impact that we can have with our customers. And my goal is to introduce accessibility into every customer conversation. We have a program called Just One More Thing, inspired by our Chief Accessibility Officer. And we're finding that if you introduce accessibility into the customer conversation, it's almost universally received with great interest. And we're trying to scale this program right across the region so that we can really create a culture where everyone feels valued and welcomed.
Yeah.
Awesome. Leena?
I hope, Corie, when we speak 2 years from now or 3 years from now, you can tell me that Unilever is the beacon for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the world. I really, really hope so. And I really hope we don't have to 3 years later try to convince people on why it's important. There's no more need for business case, moral case. People just get it and do it because they understand it.
Yeah, love it. I totally agree. Mark, anything you can add?
I think, as both Unilever and Microsoft are clients, when our clients speak like that, you can see how, why taking this, more seriously and putting disability really at the heart of the agenda for WPP will make us, both a better company, but also a more successful company. And I think when those two things align, when the moral imperative and the business imperative align, then truly we're in the right place. So we have more work to do, as everyone recognises, and we're not there yet. But I think that it's something that I'm committed to, and our leadership is committed to, and I think will help make WPP a better, a more successful company in the future.
Brilliant. It's great to hear, and totally agree. Having this kind of top level C-suite, they call it, engagement is just so brilliant and so energizing. And I think now we're at that point where we need more of it. We need so much more of it. And I'd say to anybody who's watching this now, use this as the ammunition to go and win the case in your own organizations. We need buy-in at all levels of the organization, but that starts right at the top, and it ripples down, but it does start right at the top with leaders like these amazing guys here. Mark, Leena, Cindy, thank you so much for your time, for your insights, and I've really enjoyed today's session, and I really hope you have too.
Thanks,
Corie.
Absolutely. Thank you all. Thank you, Leena. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you,
Corie.
Cindy.